Welcome, friends, back to the Performance Mindset Show. I'm your host, Amy Calandrino. I'm CEO of Beyond Commercial and author of the Amazon bestseller, From Perfect to Real. This show is all about leveling up in business, real estate, leadership, and life by shifting how you think, grow, and lead. So if you're ready to ditch perfection, trust your path, and grow with intention, you are in the right place. Be sure to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today I have with me Katie Kim, and he is a real estate developer. But what I found was most interesting than anything is that her whole focus on mindset, and then also helping others to learn how to do real estate development and all that she does in the community. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So when did you get started in real estate, and kind of talk about your journey and then kind of what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I was born and bred into a real estate development construction family, and I went away to college and worked in tech and consulting. I won't dig into that a little bit, but then went to work for a startup and then had the ask of, hey, do you want to come home and run the family business? I was like, no. But one of the things I found, of course, we negotiate. So I said, only if you teach me the development side of it, right? Because that was the missing piece. I had graduated college, moved to Chicago, bought my first real estate, investment property. Next year, bought another one. Next year, bought another one. Just kind of like, I want to say like on the side invested. And when I started to learn the real estate game and really the development part of it, I got hooked in term because I was able to start seeing and creating things, and I loved it. But when we were talking about before we started, it's the mindset going into that I had to kind of slow down to speed up, because as a computer programmer, if you will, because I have a master's of computer science, I wanted that linear path for progress, right? So I think we all want, right? Like you go to 9th grade, then you go to 10th grade, you go 11th grade, all that, and you graduate. Well, development's not like that. It's, you kind of take 2 steps forward, you go left, you go right. I mean, it's like a squibbly drawing of progress, right? So it's progress over perfection. It's not a linear path. And so at first I was frustrated with it, but then I was like, oh, this is like a playground then. And so I look at it as like a funnel where it's like, I have all these options to work with, all these product types and different, development phases and incentives, and how I can structure a deal. And that I can then start to say, what does this deal need? And start to move forward with it. And I love that so much that, in the impact it has, that then I started, launching a developer for fee service where we help other people and coach them and mentor them through and consult with them through their development projects. So they learn that process. They learn how to think through the deal. They make all the decisions. And that has been one of the most fulfilling things that I've stepped into. And then recently I launched our online real estate development academy where we do that on a higher scale. So it's kind of my journey through. It's not, everybody always says it's not the typical journey. I don't think real estate developers or real estate agents usually have a typical journey. And path. I think we all get into it for a different reason, and then we find our niche, and that comes down to like you say and promote here is your mindset. Like where I call it the time, talent, treasure triangle is you only have so much time, so much talent, and so much treasure at any given time. And so lean into that, right? Lean into what strategy does that align with? What, are you really talented and you can do all the fix and flip stuff? So, that's a good strategy for you, or BRRRR or something. But everybody goes into like, what's the latest and greatest strategy or whatever, the latest and greatest. Let's just put it that way, because there's always a different name for it too. And what we really need to do is look at where are we in alignment and what's going to get, where we're at right now and where do we want to be? So I love that mindset, focus and mission and message that you have, because that's where it starts. Because we got to get out of our own mind to be able to step into the opportunity, step into the uncomfortable zone and start to move things forward.
Well, I call it getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. uncomfortable. Yeah, like sometimes I feel like I'm just like this kind of like floating balloon, but then sometimes kind of being up there, then all of a sudden you might see something you didn't notice before.
Yes. Well, and uncomfortable with being comfortable and comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Like that's the shift when you start to feel comfortable. I'm sure now it's like, whoa, wait a second, we're not growing. Like let's get back on track.
Yeah. When you first got into development, before you had the academy, before you started doing coaching and all the different things, you're obviously a woman. I think real estate, commercial real estate, especially development, can be a male dominated space. How did you navigate that and start to really kind of build that wealth as a woman in real estate?
Great question. So I grew up in it. So a lot of, I've actually never not been in a male dominated field. I realized that when I was thinking about it because I was, growing up in the family. I say I was a victim of child labor law. Like I would have to go to soccer practice and then I'd go, build walls with my dad or like go to volleyball and then shingle a roof or something. And so I was always on the job site. Those guys were like my second and third uncles. And, I grew up in it, so I didn't know anything different. When I got my computer science degree, I mean, I was oftentimes the only woman in the room, and especially then in front of clients and everything. And so I've never known a different environment, but recently I've become a lot more aware that there are not women in the rooms. There are not people at the, those women are not at the table for those projects and discussions. And that really, motivated me to start building that education, building that knowledge. Because for me, I grew up in it. I knew a lot of these people, and that network that I had built for so many years that I didn't even realize it as a kid was helping me be that support system, for my projects, for my company, and really to help me put things across the finish line. And leaning into that of just building my network, who do I need to know? Who do I want to be in the room with? I've started to take that mindset versus like, wow, I'm the only woman in the room. I look around, I'm like, okay, like who else is in the room? Who do I need to be in the room to grow? And I focus on that mindset. So it's very interesting because you don't, again, what you grew up with is what you know. It comes second hat to you. But that, like I said, recently, I just really started to become aware of that there aren't many women in the room. And so I invite them onto my job sites. I expose women at a younger age to construction. So we'll bring 4-H groups through our job sites. So we have them all in hard hats and they can ask me any question they want. We can have developer for a day. We bring in young women, young individuals to come and ask me questions and shadow me. So really trying to immerse those that aren't in the room right now or around it into the room, bring them into the room.
Yeah, it's so cool to be able to give back to the younger generation. My husband and I do something called Aspiring Entrepreneurs, and it focuses on helping to expose kids to like entrepreneurship. And then it's been interesting. I've had a lot of clients now that have children that are like, "Oh, can they shadow you for a day?" or things like that. And so I think that's always kind of great to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was one mentorship or program I did, and the lady didn't want to go into development per se, but it was just, a shadow, have somebody shadow you for a day. And it was interesting that I was interviewing a new business client, like coaching her through how do you start your business before you start to step into like owning real estate in it. And again, we look at the whole mindset of a person, not just the real estate portion when we step into it. And that experience for her was just mind blowing because she was like, you are looking at, making sure they're set up right, they're structured, they're legally protected, there's a strategy for taxes. I'm like, you have to. If you're going to build a relationship with somebody that's going to invest and develop, you have to be able to provide that value and guide them along the way. And so those opportunities, even if they're not going to get into real estate, are just invaluable to like expose them to those systems and processes.
Well, it seems to me if you don't build the mindset in your mind and you just all of those things to be able to handle, any kind of turbulence ahead, right? Or potentially you don't build the right foundation with the right banker, insurance company, the right tax structure, all those different things. And that's also going to increase the amount of like headwinds you may have later in the future. So I think first things first, like don't run in without building that. You were mentioning Gary Keller's book, and he's like, you build the 20-lane highway. You get ready for the growth before you all of a sudden go running towards the growth.
Yeah. And one of the diagrams in those books I think is so pertinent is where he says, like, when you're building systems, right? Are you building systems for a $100,000 a year company? And then you're going to have to redo those systems at 500, and that makes me look at like anytime we do a switch, right? In processes or software, or anything, it's like, are we building this so we can scale and not have to redo this? Because we don't have time to redo this, right? Maybe tweak, but yeah, we want to keep moving forward with what we want to do, the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the same kind of methodology with the folks that I serve, so that you have already established that foundation and you're ready to go. Otherwise, other than just like closing the deal and then they're not ready.
Yeah, and a lot of times the mind is such a strong and powerful tool that we can overthink ourselves and we can question, like, can we do this? Am I capable of doing this? Do I have the right skill set? Even if you've already done it 10 or 12 different times. There are some developers that come to me for coaching and mentorship, and it's like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm bad at math. I can't run numbers. And I'm like, but you've already done like 5 projects and they're successful and you're good. And they're like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, okay, let's step through this. Let's start doing some reps, right? Let's start doing some reps to see where where you're not confident, right? Because if you have those big assumptions in your mind, that's going to stop you from moving forward. And that's what we have to, even before we can start to do the reps and run the numbers, we got to get you out of your own head. We got to get you in that mindset that you can do this. We're going to hold your hand through the process. Here's how we go. Let's step one.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I mean, you probably deal a lot with folks that have fear of failure or just get kind of fearful of taking that first step. Like, how do you see that process? And it's probably different from each person, but what do you see generally, and what kind of tips do you have for someone?
Yes. So the first thing we do with anybody, whether they come into the development academy or we're working with them on a consulting basis, is we go into a strategic roadmap conversation. And I always warn people, because the first thing they always want to do is give me all the real estate details. Here's the plat, here's this, here's our LLC document. I'm like, that's great. I need that. I need to know where you're going first, because that structure, that focus can start to bring in these different tools that you may not know about as an investor, as a developer, as, a real estate agent. You may not know about them when you're at level 1. But as you start to grow to level 2, 3, 4, 5, those are going to come into play. So I want to know, again, strategic roadmap. I want to know where you're going so that we can start that foundation, just like we were talking about with Gary Keller, start that foundation. So we're building upon it, not having to rebuild or refocus every time. You're just enhancing it. And so there's a lot of ways that if you start right, and know, again, your time, talent, and treasure triangle. So we focus on 3 things in the risk assessment: time, talent, treasure triangle, your risk tolerance, because that's going to guide how you structure a lot of things, and then your goals. Like, where are you heading? What's your North Star? How are we getting there? And that really helps a lot of times the client, the person, realize, like, yeah, I don't really like creating walls. I don't really like, nailing 2x4s together. So I really don't want to do that, right? I don't really like property managing my own property and getting calls in the middle of, my son's birthday party, right? So then you're creating that foundation. So you're not doing that, right? You're not leaning into something that's not in alignment with your time, talent, and treasure triangle. And a lot of times I warn people at the first meeting, I'm like, we're not going to talk about real estate at all. And they're like, what? And it's like, nope, we're going to get where we're going first and then step into it. So it's a lot of getting out of your own head, because development deals can die like 20 to 30 times. So if we don't have a true roadmap of that true strategy and North Star, you're going to give up. You're not going to complete the project. And then you're going to think, oh, I can't do development. Oh, this is not for me. When it may be, it just may be the wrong strategy or maybe the wrong, product type or the wrong phase. But if you don't do that mindset work and that goal work up front, you're kind of blowing in the wind with what's the latest, craze or strategy or trend or whatever. And then you're out of alignment before you know it.
Well, if you're not passionate about it or it doesn't align with your overall vision and you're just doing it to make money or you're doing it because other people are doing it and everybody's saying, let's just say historic preservation is like the coolest new thing, but maybe instead you really like doing small bay industrial, but then you're trying to do this because everybody else is doing this, then it may not work out for you.
Yeah. And if you don't have that passion, I think Oprah said this one time, like 90% of any job is a grind. It's just kind of like the tread you have to go through to get to the 10% that you're really passionate and you light up about and you're so excited. And, when you mention that, it's like, that's what I think is like, if you're not excited about what you're doing and you're not, again, in that alignment, I love historical preservation. For me, that's my jam. Like, I love that. But if you're not a student of the game, you could be going into something and a project and not understand that all these people are using like tax credits and incentives and all that stuff to put together the deal. And you may be trying to do it like a regular fix and flip, right? Or an 80-20 deal. And those are not going to work. And so again, you're not getting the right talent in there. You're not getting the right treasure, but you're going to be spending a whole bunch of time trying to figure it out. So then you're going to be off alignment.
Well, yeah, because if you try to make it work with a normal deal and a historic preservation deal, it's the sheer construction cost and all that. But if you bring to the table the credits and all these other things, that's how you actually end up making it pencil.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a industry that's, is really hard to understand at first. Like the historic tax credits are hard. We've done it I think we've used historic tax credits on 3 or 4 projects now, and we've used them differently each time. And I love it because we're constantly learning how to add value when we bring them to a project. And we're probably going to use them on 2 more this year, I think. So they're great incentives to work with.
Awesome. Yeah. Have you done a lot of those projects yourself and consulted with clients on them?
Yes. So the bakery project, the first one we did as our developer for fee service, we used historic tax credits on that. And probably the next, I'm going to say 3 or 4 projects we did tax credits, took a little bit of break and then came back to it. And a couple of the ones we're looking at in the Texas Triangle right now, we're going to bring historic tax credits into them. It's just those amazing, beautiful buildings downtown that have kind of been overlooked because they're more complex, right? It's not the easy by the interstate or north in a cornfield or a ranch type of development where it's just wide open. They're a little bit more complex and many steps, many ways to stumble. So, but the reward is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. I'm working with an owner right now that's doing a complete, historic kind of modernization and revitalization of their 1925 building. And it's really cool to see. So they own it and they operate their business downstairs, but we're moving upstairs and I'm managing the fill of the property down below. But it's fun. I really enjoy like walking through and seeing different components from the building. And it's really
Well, and a lot of those, the historic tax credits, sometimes those buildings are also in other areas that have more incentives. So from a business side, that they could enhance their opportunity too. So a lot of times they're in a TIF district, a tax incremental financing district, and or an enterprise zone. And a lot of times when people think of enterprise zones, they think of, well, I get my with an enterprise zone, I get the sales tax exemption off the building equipment and building materials. Yes, you get the sales tax exemption off the building materials, but you can get so much more. Like you can get business tax credits, you can get employee hiring tax credits, you can get utility tax credits, energy efficiency, and like there's so much depth and breadth that's one thing that knowing the game, knowing all the details about an incentive can change your finances like drastically for a project.
Well, and that's why it's good to connect with someone like you to kind of help guide you in that way, especially if it's your first time.
Yes, because the bakery project, we had 8 financial sources in that deal to make it work. And like, yeah, 8. And, but our owners didn't have a lot of money to put into the deal. So and they didn't have a lot of money to pay for rent because their business was a bakery. So they weren't making, huge profits. So we had to go with a below market rate rent for a pro forma with, renovation construction costs, which is usually, 2 to 3 times what a new build would be, and then figure out how to make it work. And we did. And by layering those sources, we were able to give our investors that 353% return in 4 years. But for those incentives coming in, there's no way we could have. And so you want to talk about like mindset when you're going into that pro forma building and the stack building, one of those financial sources changes and you got to go back to all of them to kind of redo the deal. And we had that happen multiple times. And so, and here you'll love this. And we always talk about let's talk about the train wrecks, right? Because those are the ones we learn the biggest lessons from. So I had to go back to council twice for the TIF bond amount. So we first went for 1.2 and then we had to go back for 1.6 because costs, kind of kept coming in differently and increasing that price. And then a month before, okay, we have 8 financial sources, as I just said. A month before we're going to close on the deal, put a shovel in the ground, start demo, the main bank backed out. So you want to talk about being tackled, right? You want to talk about a mindset crush. And my team actually, because I am tenacious. Like if there's one word you want to say, I am tenacious. Like there's always a plan A, B, C, D, E, F. I'm going to M, Z,
No doesn't exist in my vocabulary either.
What?
No doesn't exist in my vocabulary either. There's got to be a way if it makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. So there was one day I remember in that project, and it was that day when I got this, I was like, oh my gosh, like it felt like a big just kick in the gut. And my team, it was funny, they kicked me out of the office. They, because you need a minute to process sometimes. And they go, no, go get your Katie back. And so I went and I walked along this trail we have in our city and came back. And I was like, this is what we're going to do. And we just went down, tackled it. We still closed on time, started, getting shovel in the ground going. But sometimes you need to take a minute and that's okay. Clear your head, rethink, strategize, touch base with your network, right? Like, how are you doing things? How do we work together? And lean in on those networks that you've built at that point in time so you can get that clarity and get different input and insight and move forward.
One of my favorite books I've been reading is The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's a New York Times bestseller, multiple weeks in a row. And he talks about the 5 types of wealth, and one of them is actually physical. And I noticed too, if I have a moment during the day where I just like, my brain is like mush, I'm totally overstimulated, and I've had a lot thrown at me, and I can handle a lot. I really can handle a lot. But, sometimes going out there for like a walk or meditating, breathing, and just stepping away, you can then figure out, okay, what's the new path forward? And I think that's something so important to teach people is something that you do need to allocate time to and also make a priority so that you can succeed.
Yes. Oh, 100%. So I have a day, it's Wednesday, I call my crank day. I don't take any meetings unless it's an emergency, like unless it has to happen that day. But I don't take any meetings. I work. I normally don't check my email or phone for blocks of time. And most of my team and the people I work with know that. Like, you're not going to get me on Wednesday readily. And I recently have started to look at how do I incorporate places in my schedule where it's not a crank time. It is a like thinking time. Go out, walk, like you said, walk in the woods, or we love to paddleboard here, right? So like, go be with nature. And like then I find when I get those snippets of time, like my brain just, it kind of is like a new kid finding a new toy, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like we could do this, we could do that, we could do, and just the ideas flow. And that's why, yes, that time as little snippets are important, but then also those like retreats and those like conferences we go to where we're in the room with different people but have that downtime still when we're in the room with those people.
Oh, especially if a conference gives us a solid 2 hours for lunch and everything, I literally go take like a 30-minute like power nap. And then I'm like
Yes.
to the races like in the afternoon. But it was funny. Yeah, he said in his book, it's they always say, oh, people think of things when they're in the shower. Well, they think of that because you finally have stopped for a minute to. So if you're just constantly at a go, you're going to be depleting yourself. So not that you don't work with vigor, like you're talking about the crank day. I kind of do the same thing. I have a pretty intense cadence, my Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. But Thursdays, I try to golf for 2.5 hours, do like 9 holes, and then do more like admin and strategic kind of things. And then Friday's kind of like my flex day. It's really like a hodgepodge. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of picking up. I always say it's like closing out the 188 like tabs on my computer that have like started through the week, and then what's the plan for next week. So
yeah, I have that integrity check on Friday. Like, what did I say I was going to do this week that I haven't done? I need to reset those expectations. I love that you said 9 holes. Like I rediscovered golf a couple years ago. And the one thing I love about it is that I can't have my phone on, right?
Oh, no, I don't leave my phone on. No.
Yeah. Like maybe for the yardage, I'll have it on every now and then, but like
I just wear a second watch. Here's my little golf watch. So I'm like super lame, like walking around with the.
I might need to put that on my Christmas list then.
Yeah, this is the Garmin, but it does all the yardage and everything, and I just leave it to the left of my Apple Watch.
Oh,
and then I put my Apple Watch on airplane mode and do not disturb.
Yes, yeah, because it's not as if anybody who's calling you expects, if it's a fire drill, you have a team in place to handle that, right? Yeah. And when I would do lead generation, my coach would make me put like a stop sign on the door and say, like, if the building's on fire, call 911, I'll get out. Like, do not enter, do not come in. Because, those are the tasks that, like, again, if somebody comes in, my mindset is, I want to help you. I don't want to necessarily do this grind task, but you have to do that grind task and keep focused and aligned. And in order to be able to take those moments, right, where you can go on the golf course. And we have a Wednesday women 9 and dine, and it's a lot of women who are on all different professions. It's not just real estate, but we go out, we play 9 holes, and then we have dinner, and we're talking about work. It's all confidential, right? We're not sharing anything that's, NDA violations or anything, but we're talking about work. We're talking about like, how do we juggle things? How do you have those skill sets, those, mindset? And then also like, what do you need? How can we support you? And I feel like that is such a great release. And just to be able to, again, you're in nature, usually if you're on a golf course somewhere, and just take that time. And yes, it can be frustrating. Sometimes I love golf and sometimes golf doesn't love me, but have that time. And I see why people like the golf course, because you're not on, and you can't, like you said, in the shower, you can't be in your face with technology. Like my son was getting frustrated on something the other day. I'm like, well, you're always activated. He's like, what? I'm like, you're always looking at something or listening to something or I said, put your phone down, like go for a walk. And he's like, well, I put my phone down. I'm like, okay. And so he did, and he came back and he was a totally different person. He's like, I don't know why I was overreacting. I'm like, because you're just keep adding on and adding on and adding on, and you don't ever refresh. You don't ever like clear the queue, right? And just refresh. And, half of parenting is professional coaching. I firmly believe now. So.
I have one thing I do is I have a 4 to 5 year old. One of our babysitters recommended one of my daughter's having trouble with recognizing letters like uppercase versus lowercase, and she's 4, right? She'll get those like little like on a little like circle thing, those flashcards. And so my son and my daughter will do like flashcards with each other in the morning, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I mean, like, I'm gonna definitely keep going analog in the car with them because like they're entertaining each other. So
Oh yeah. We had this one kind of squirrel moment here, but like we had this one realization where we went to, I'll never forget, it was a Buffalo Wild Wings, and we had the electronic babysitter for our kid, right? It was an iPad, so that each of them had their own iPad. My husband was on his phone, like, getting one more email in before the waitress came to take our order. I was finishing something up because I just got there, and I look around the table. I'm like, okay, we're all on devices. I look around the restaurant and like everybody's on a device. Like nobody's talking to somebody else. And so I'm like, that's it. No tech at the table. Like no tech at the table. And now what we do when we go out to eat is we either bring Uno cards or like a deck of playing cards. And we'll play, like when the boys were young, we'd play Uno at the restaurant before our food came. And you'll be surprised how many people are like, oh my gosh, I used to play that as a kid, or this and that. And the best part is the conversations that come out of the game, not necessarily the game. And so it's getting kids, how many parents ask, like, how was your day? It was fine. It's good. What'd you do? Nothing. Okay. So glad we're going to school. Right. Like, but when you start playing Uno, like they start to tell you about those fun little moments during the day because their brain's not like just repetitive, that answer. And that to me is just like a mind trick, right? Is like, we just got to get out of our own head sometimes. And if you want to engage with people, you got to like engage on a personal level versus like always be on tech.
yeah, I think one thing I saw. I watched Joe Rogan. Whether people like me or hate me for that, that's fine. But what I find is astonishing is Elon Musk will go on there, and whether you love him or hate him, whatever, I find it absolutely fascinating how much he has going on in his life, and he is not on his phone once during a 3-hour interview. So if he can go on there for 3 hours, I can surely do like a 2 hour and 15-minute 9-hole round and have my phone off. Granted, if there really, really, really was an emergency with my kids, they could call the pro shop and they'd go grab me off the course. I mean, they know where I am.
Yeah. And that, I love when you say that because that's the mindset we tell ourselves. We got to be on. We always got to be on. People, oh my gosh, if I lose a sale. Well, here's the thing is nobody wants you with an empty tank.
No.
Nobody wants you depleted. So they understand you have to refresh. They understand that. And if they don't, you're working with the wrong people. I would tell people like, hey, from 5:30 to 8:30, that's my kid time. Like you can text me, you can email me. If I can, I'll get back. Like if I'm waiting for him in a parking lot, to come out from practice or something or, whatever, I'll respond. But otherwise, if I work that night, I'll respond to you or you'll get it the next day, And so it's interesting when you then train your clients that's how your mindset and your methodology is. When you answer the phone during that time. I remember one client was like, why'd you answer the phone? Like, you need to be with your kids. Like they were guarding my time for me. Yep. And I was like, no, my son's like, he's just getting dressed. So I have like 5 minutes. What's up? And they're like, no. Like, let me get your answer machine. Like, and they were amazing, right? Because they're guarding your time because they understand they want you with the full tank. And so, when you say that, it's like, why do we feel like we got to be on? And if we do, we got to go back and look at our systems and our processes and get those refreshed, right? Because if somebody doesn't get me, and it's emergency, you don't understand my systems and processes. You don't understand my team, which then I need to do a better job educating you, right? Like if you have an emergency, you need to call this number or this number, get this person or this person, not me. Because even if I was available and wasn't doing, refreshing time or crank time, I may be in a meeting with another client or on another project or on a job site, and I still may not be able to get your call in that set. So that's, I think, if you feel like you're being tackled by all these, like me, you haven't set the standard and the process and the procedures to be able to elevate that mindset and teach your clients. And that's a big thing. I think entrepreneurs like it's gotta be me. It's gotta be me. And agents too, right? Real estate agents want to be that go-to person. Well, great. But that doesn't mean for everything, right? You got to look at your highest and best use of your time. And then your team should handle everything that's not the highest and best use of your time, period. I mean, it sounds simple. It's a lot more complex to execute, as you know.
Well, yeah, my highest and best use is doing intro call strategy calls, as I say, like with intake of clients, setting the strategy for what we're going to do for the clients, and then obviously overseeing the execution of that and, bringing it to a closure. But all the other things, scheduling showings or putting signs in the ground and all those other things, I don't need to be concerned with whatsoever. It's interesting when you talk about client selection. This week I had a buyer I'm representing. Everything was going great for closing. Day before closing, car crashes into the building. And so it's all going to work out fine. And, we're doing an extension. But yeah, my client texted me last night at like 7:45 and said, do you have a couple minutes? If not, tomorrow's fine. And I called him and he was like, okay, let me go over the extension again, so we can deal with this insurance thing and deal with the car that crashed. But he's totally like that. And he said, and again, sorry. I know this is like your family time. I really appreciate it. But granted, I actually had a babysitter last night and I went to Costco. There's 2.5 hours I'm not going to get back in my life, but it's $800. But
and you forgot the one thing you went in there for.
Yes!
Yeah. Welcome to Costco.
I went to pour my coffee this morning. I'm like, I didn't get half and half. So
I feel like there needs to be like a checklist on their app of like, did you get what you came for? Did you get what you came for? But no, that's great that's a car running into a building, right? Like that's a pretty major thing. And yet you're like, they can handle it. And I think sometimes we're leaders. And again, when you're just starting out or you're a young entrepreneur, you want to be the person with all the answers, right? Because you fought so hard to get the answers, right? You fought so hard to get that knowledge. But here's the thing is that a lot of times those high performers, they don't have all the answers. But what good leaders do is good leaders don't tell you how to do something. They tell you how to think like them. So when they're not there, you think like them and can troubleshoot it. I remember there was a point when I was running my family's construction company. I was actually breastfeeding at the time. So it was very interesting because I was pumping, probably way too much information for some of your users, but I was covered and the superintendent came in and I'm just sitting there like, and so it comes in the office and he's like, so we have this issue on the job site. I'm like, okay, all right, let's talk through this. Right. And he goes, so I know what you're going to say. And if you come with me to any problems, you have to come with 3 suggestions for a solution. Like, don't even talk to me about this until you have exit the room, come back in. Right.
Don't bring me a monkey to put on my back.
Yes. Because to me, it's like, yeah, I'm not your easy button, right? Like, right. No, I want to enable you as a leader. I don't want to entitle you, right? Like, I don't want you to be like, well, you're my boss. You need to come and do the answers. I'm paying you a good amount of money to run this job. I need you to think like an owner on this job. So he comes in the office and he's like, okay, I know you're going to talk about this. This is the problem. You're going to say, what are your 3 things? So I already went and did that. And these are the 3 things. And he bulleted out each one. And I'm like, I know what your next question is going to be is like, what are the pros and cons of each of these options? And then I know what your third question is going to be is like, if it's your money, what would you do and why? And so I thought about this and da-da-da-da. And so I went through that and I like, what are the pros, cons? And I didn't say a word during this, right? And I'm sitting here and I just turned off my pump and I'm like, okay, all right. Cause this is a half an hour conversation, not saying a word. I'm just listening like a little proud mama. Cause I was like, oh, okay. And then he literally was like, so this is what I'm doing. It's going to save us this much money. Da, 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 da. I've already coordinated with the architect, da, 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 and just walks right back out. And I'm like, and that is how I want to lead, right? Is you really don't need me, but right. You know exactly the process to think through the problem, right? And it was, because what did I do? I had always asked him 3 questions, anybody. I asked them 3 questions and those 3 questions. And once you start to walk through that, you're like, okay, now you're thinking like me when I'm not in that room. So that's to me what true leadership is because you can't be everywhere and you can't do everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's so amazing. I think there's a book by Harvard all about like leadership, and I think they call it the 5 levels of delegation. And one is like someone just comes to you and dumps the problem. And the second, there's 5 levels. And I think my husband deploys it in his law firm and he calls it do never come to me with level 3 or below. Like number 3 is like you bring the solution, like you said. Number 4, he was exercising level 4 because he not only did the solution, but then he also told you how he ended up executing it. Level 5 delegation is he would have never told you about it. So
You had just done it.
he would have just done it.
Yeah.
But
That,
level 4 is amazing.
yeah. No, that would be great because that's a lot of times, like even when we're going through the academy, when somebody asks me a question, I'm like, can I record this as a think out loud video? And so what I'll do is like, okay, here's the question, here's the situation, here's how I'm thinking through this process. Again, why? Because I want to teach you how to think. I don't just want to, again, that like additive, like I don't want to like give you a fish. I want to teach you how to fish, right? I want to teach you how to do this
Right.
process, how to get out of your mind and be able to start thinking through a lot of those questions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything? Well, one thing we did talk about, and we'll talk about this briefly, and then we'll get to close. Is you did talk about your developer academy, and again, we've talked a lot about going ahead and developing the person. So you're doing real estate development, but a lot of being successful in real estate development or otherwise is developing the person and the mindset. So, can you talk a little bit about your intentionality with that and what you've seen come out of that?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, we start with that strategic roadmap where we want to know, well, I want to know where people are going. So then, our whole team can help guide them, enable them to be focused and go that in their path. And for example, the intentionality of there was a lot of big assumptions with a couple of our students that was preventing them from taking that next step, preventing them from starting to do the reps and run the numbers. And so I brought into our community, because I'll do that every so often. I'll bring in another expert in their field, like a banker or attorney. I brought in Alicia St. Germain to do a journey mapping exercise with the academy this past week. And it was all on big assumptions. And it's that like back of the brain voice that's telling you like, you can't do this because of this. Like you could fail. You could do this. You could, people might see you as not perfect. Like, let's throw that out the window. But like, I mean, it's that back of the voice. And after that, it was interesting because that call, it was a different call, right? It wasn't about real estate. It was about mindset and what we tell ourselves and those assumptions. That night, breakthroughs. So many of those individuals texted me and said, oh my gosh, Katie, I did this, this, and this today. I feel on fire. Like I could solve the world. Right. And it's the little things that are so hard to do, but they're so easy not to do that we have to take those steps, be able to get in the right path and get that right strategy and the right focus so we can lean into it. And that's really where we look at from the beginning with the academy and or, with our coach, with our consulting and get that mindset right. And it's not a checkbox. And that's, I know what you experience, especially in your business and in the podcast too, is it's not a checkbox. It is a constant journey that you have to have people around you that know your alignment. They're cheerleading for you to go in the right direction. And that's what beyond teaching everybody how to do development and real estate, I want to make sure that you have a healthy mindset when you go into it. Because if you're building that empire, if you're building the portfolio and you want to pass it to generations and all of that, those are different mindsets than going into a one and done deal. And that's where I love to be the guide for people through that because it's, I think, often forgotten, but once people experience it, it's game changer.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Well, how do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about all these things?
Yes. Yeah. So, katiekim.com is our website, KATIEKIM.com. And then on social media, our handle is the Katie Kim. And that has our knowledge nuggets. So we teach people about the terminology. It has our money math. We do our math equations and why you should use them. Mostly that stemmed from my kids of like, Mom, I'm never going to use this equation. I'm like, that one you will, this one you won't, like how we do that with our kids. But, and all of our information on our academy, any workshops we have and master classes will all be on either our website or socials.
Awesome. Well, this has been really good. And I look forward to hopefully even staying in touch. If you're in Orlando or I'm out your way, we can hit each other up.
Please. Would love it.
I have a feeling we get along.
I think so.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you everybody for listening to another episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. If today's episode gave you something to think about, be sure to share it and also subscribe. If you want to go deeper, make sure to grab my book, From Perfect to Real. It's all about dropping perfection and thriving your way. Until next time, you can stay in contact with me on beyondcommercial.com or amycalandrino.com. Until next time, stay grounded, stay growing, and keep showing up for you. This is Amy Calandrino, signing off.